POV. It's May 2025 and you're almost finished building the first demo for Cursed Words, the roguelike word game that isn't a word game at all. You think the ideas in your design doc will completely transform the word game genre, but if you're going to be sure, you have to finish making this thing, and there are a few big challenges you've yet to overcome. It's Devlog time. Let's talk about art. We're a multidisciplinary team, but none of us are exactly great artists. We're limited by our capacity as a studio, which right now might not seem like a problem. A few MS Paint sketches can sub in for anything we might want an artist to come in on later, right? Well, kind of. If we find a real easy way to create a ton of content without thinking about the artwork, then we're going to accrue a ton of art debt, and that could really slip away from us. It could take a long time for someone to catch up to us, and it could cost us a lot of money. We don't need that stress. We need a long-term solution for art. We want to be limited by our ideas, not our time. The big place this problem feels like it will crop up is with our items. We've already written ideas for 50 of them down, and we don't plan on slowing down. That said, we think we have a solution. In our previous word game, Words on the Street, players were rewarded for leveling up and performing well in-game by being able to fill out a sticker book. We wanted players to be able to type out their stickers in Twitch chat, and so the natural solution was to make the stickers emojis. That way, people could tweet out their sticker collection, kind of like people were tweeting out their Wordle results in the little emoji grid. Wordle was really popping off at the time. Twomoji is an open source library of stylishly rendered flat color emojis that fits the aesthetic style we want to go for anyway. And so we can import images of them and then style them like stickers using something called SDFs, signed distance fields. It lets us draw uniform borders around the edges of these shapes, even when they're funny and weird looking. Side note, we seem to really like stickers as a studio. One of our favourite little features from our other Steam release, Waver, were the gold star stickers that would appear on players' tickets when they beat a level with a high enough score. There's something nostalgic and playful about them that we seem to keep going back to. Clearly we didn't get enough gold stars as kids. So, excellent, the stickers are looking good, but we need something else for our second object type. The natural addition to stickers are stamps. A stamp is basically just a special kind of sticker that also has a distinct visual language we can lean on. Lastly, we do need one more thing. Our unique character item feels like it shouldn't really be a sticker or a stamp, but it should fit into this world as well. Something that could be attached to the person, but maybe also act as an identity, hence the pin. Sort of a name tag, sort of a sticker, sort of a stamp. It feels like it works. We have a long-term solution now for our item art, and we've got an aesthetic decision that is now essentially final. This is great because it means we can start really getting a sense of what the game should look like. We can let this decision lead us elsewhere and help us decide how we want to render our characters, our colour palettes, all kinds of stuff. So let's dive into the shop screen and get all this stuff laid out. The shop is going to be split across 2 rows. We have 2 stamp slots in the shop, similar to Balattro's Jokers. But stickers, we're going to need more. We could do with an expanded shelf because the player's looking for both new stickers and upgrades. A typical build expects up to 15 sticker purchases, not just 5. Okay, to the left of the stamps, we have 2 slots for consumable tiles, which we'll talk about more later. Stickers and stamps can be frozen, like units in an auto battler. The shopkeeper will hold them for you and not re-roll them or refill the slot in between shops. You can save something for later at the cost of seeing fewer new things in your next shop. But this way you don't have to worry too much about not having the money to buy something straight away. Lastly, in the corner of the shop, there's a restock button. You can restock the shop for $1, increasing by an additional $1 for each restock until you come back to a new shop. And then below that, you can see Michael. Oh right, we never introduced...
You may have noticed that Michael is a little bit everywhere. You probably spotted him in the corner of Words on the Street earlier. He's in the opening cutscene too, as you might have seen in our last devlog. And in Cursed Words, Michael is the one to introduce the game, ask for your help finding words, and deliver a little tutorial. He's here on the menu too, of course, just keeping an eye on you. Very thoughtful of him. Michael's a good friend like that. And finally, in these devlogs, you've been seeing Michael around as a placeholder in many of the spots we're expecting to see other character art showing up later. So what is the deal? Words on the Street was a Twitch players game. You can't buy Words on the Street, you could only play by going to the Twitch channel. There are comparable games like Words on Stream, but this and similar games are generally intended to be interstitial. They're usually played in short stints while the streamer is taking a break to keep their audiences engaged. Words on the Street was not that. It was the entire content of its Twitch channel. People would come to the channel only to play Words on the Street. So, we wanted to emulate a typical stream as closely as possible in a way not done by Words on Stream, or even things like Twitch Plays Pokemon. A stream, after all, needs a streamer. We did not personally plan to be the streamers, though. The Twitch channel was intended to run autonomously, so we designed a cast of characters who could eventually act as this kind of part streamer, part game show host. Thematically, having these characters be puppets felt perfect. They're hosting a family-friendly, arguably even educational, word game, so evoking a style reminiscent of Sesame Street immediately felt like the right approach. Also, just like how our studio seems to try and put stickers into all of our projects, we're also big fans of hand puppets, and they featured in many internal game pitches and idea documents, predating even Words on the Street. I would be surprised if Curse Words ended up being Buried Things' final game featuring puppets. To keep things interesting on streams, we plan to rotate through these different characters and give them different personalities, perhaps different voices, perhaps each runs different minigames in Words on the Street that were unique to them. The backstory is that they all live together in a kind of streamer house on Syntax Street and run this Twitch channel as a team. Michael Pillow, to give him his full name, has become something of a studio mascot. Michael was the first and only of these characters to be realised in the short time that we ran Words on the Street. Curse Words is a spiritual successor to Words on the Street, so it was only natural for us to bring over these character designs and have them finally see the light of day. And of course, Michael had to become the main character in the narrative. I mean, look at him. You can't say no to that face.
With our red and blue builds established in the first month, it's time to create some items focused on void and shiny tiles. We wanted to give each tile colour a unique identity and feel. Red and blue are straightforward colour names that don't imply much, but void and shiny, they inject a bit more mystery. They suggest visuals, but they also hint at the desirability of the tiles. Shiny sounds exciting and rewarding, and void sounds empty or even dangerous. Void tiles have a negative score, which seems pretty bad, right? Why would I want to spend my money on a tile that takes score away from me? This shopkeeper is playing me for a fool. We use voids to explore the idea that, in a puzzle, the choice not to interact with something can be as interesting as the choice to interact with it. In The Witness, you draw lines to solve puzzles, and one of the environmental puzzles requires you not to solve another puzzle. This can be really difficult to spot after a whole game of trying to solve puzzles. It almost makes the player take a step back and reevaluate what they were doing. When players first see a void tile with a negative score in the shop, they often ask, why would I ever want to buy that? But items like Dusty Coffin and Tombstone, which give you points for having void tiles on the board but not using them, answer that question. There are also items that put void tiles on your grid and give you another effect, such as Slot Machine or Gamepad. These items could be thought of as a trade-off, but actually if you're running a void build, they're just entirely positive. Shiny tiles are the most mysterious of the basic tile colours. We wanted them to feel like a prize, so we gave them a base score of 50. 50 whole points on a single tile. That's like 5 Qs. Surely not. Even a single shiny tile on the board can carry you through the early game, so it was important to balance them by making them difficult to scatter. A lot of the items which can scatter shinies are conditional. They almost give you a little side quest to complete. For example, Pinata gives you a shiny tile if your previous word had 7 or more letters. It was great to see friends, family and playtesters play the game for the first time, see the word shiny, not know what it meant, and then give themselves this little mission to discover one. Alongside void and shiny items, we also added support for a rainbow build, which rewarded getting as many colours as possible into a word. This is another way to turn void tiles into a positive. If they get you a bigger multiplier by counting as an extra colour for Dango, then the negative base score just doesn't really matter too much. And with that, we've effectively doubled the number of available playstyles in the game.
One of my big jobs this month was to make the code, which checks if your selected word is in the dictionary, a few thousand times faster than the primitive method we started with. The basic version I put in on day 1 is simply to go through every word of the dictionary and see if your selection is equal to it. Let's say you submit, this. Okay, so is your word aardvark? The first letter is A, so far so good. The next is a blank, bingo. The third, however, is T, not R. So no, this can't be aardvark. How about aardwolf? We just do that over and over until we find a match. Or we don't find a match, in which case we just checked 300,000 words. And we do so every time you click a tile. Yeah, that is not good enough. It probably goes without saying. An early optimization was to at least sort words in the dictionary into buckets by length to bring the comparison number into the tens of thousands, but that's still far from acceptable. We really shouldn't need to check aardwolf if we just failed on aardvark. What's the solution? Well, introducing trees. They're great. They look nice, they produce oxygen, they're great on a nice hot day, sit under them, read a book in the shade, play curse words on your Steam Deck. The possibilities really are endless. Sorry, right, word searching algorithms. We're going to use a tree, the computery kind of tree. A tree is just a way to store data in a branching structure. You'll be very familiar with at least one kind of tree, the files and folders on your computer. Your hard drive is the trunk. It contains folders which branch off, and the folders in those folders branch off again. The files in those folders could be called a few things. If you're really into this metaphor, then they're leaves. To a mathematician, they're edges, don't ask me why, and in software you'll probably hear them called nodes. The tree is a node map, a branching network of connections between nodes. All the words in our dictionary are arranged into this tree, into a node map. Each letter of a word is a new node branching off from the last one. A tree structure hugely simplifies our search because as soon as we fail a check on a node, we can ignore all of its sub-branches. What we've effectively built here is a system that uses almost exactly the same process as predictive text, and I'm sure you've seen how instantaneous predictive text is, even on an old mobile phone. That's a good demonstration of how fast our word searching algorithm is with the new system.
Okay, stick with me. We're going to keep looking at technical stuff for another minute or two, but I promise it's going to get us towards some nice, shiny animations. In order to set up the grid at the start of an encounter, or calculate the score when a word is submitted, we need to cycle through every item in the inventory to see if it has an effect. To make this easy for ourselves, we made a template for items, which every single item in the game uses. This template has space for information about the item like its name, cost, rarity, image, but it also knows the things that items can do, like have a start of grid effect, or affect the score of a word. The template itself doesn't actually do any of these things, so if we tell a template item to do its start of grid effect, it won't change the grid. If we tell it to apply its scoring effect, it won't change the score. It's just a template. When it comes to making a new item, we make a copy of this template, but we fill in the bits that we care about to give the item the effect that we want it to have. So when we made Ferris wheel, we gave it its name, cost, image, and we also gave it a word score effect. For all of the other effects, it'll do exactly the same as the template, nothing. So at the start of a grid, when we tell all of the inventory items to do their start of grid effects, Ferris wheel just copies the template and doesn't change the grid. Then, when we submit a word and we tell all of the inventory items to do their scoring effects, Ferris wheel checks if the start and end tile of the word are different colours and applies a multiplier if they are. Using these templates, or classes as they're called in C# allows us to create, test and tweak a lot of items really quickly. So now we know how to calculate what the score should be, but how do we actually see how it got there? It wouldn't be very satisfying to click submit and just get shown a number. We want to feel that fizz of submitting a word, seeing all your items triggering, and the score racking up over time. That rush of power and satisfaction when you see the score climb into the hundreds, thousands, tens of thousands, that's what games like Balatro and Cursed Words are all about. We'll start by showing the changes one step at a time. Each time an item has an effect, we'll pulse it, so it's easier to track where the change comes from. We'll also pulse other relevant things to show why an item is triggering. So, for example, for Ferris wheel, we'll pulse the first and last tile in your word. We'll add in tokens to show how much each item has added or multiplied your word score by. It was still a little difficult to see how tile scores were changing, so we added similar, temporary tokens to them to show each change. This system definitely wasn't one that we perfected in a single month. We tweaked it many times throughout the project, trying to make it clearer and more exciting. We want these animations to feel really juicy, so we added a sound when each token applied, and sped up over the course of the scoring. This means you get the satisfying sound of scoring effects racking up quicker and quicker. We also added bloom and music distortion effects, which ramp up whilst your word score is calculated. All of these add to the feeling that your score is going wild, and even breaking the game.
May was a busy month. This still isn't everything, so I'll keep my last couple of features brief. We added consumable tiles, inspired by the potion rack in Slay the Spire. Sometimes a generated grid can just be nasty. If you get very unlucky, then we want to have given you the tools to potentially wiggle your way out of the problem. The reroll button gives you some defense against unfortunate grids, but the option to buy consumable tiles gives you a lot more flexibility, at the cost of a little cash. It's also just a cheap extra you can drop spare cash on if you don't need more items, or don't have enough money to get one. To help test these new tiles, and other stuff, we took the time to put in a developer console. It has commands to grant tiles, cash, items, and we'll be adding plenty more commands over the next year as and when we have need for them. It also has this big box which we can print feedback and logs to. But it doesn't do that. We never got round to it. Even today, this box remains permanently empty when using the dev console. So if you've ever used a mod to get the console and wondered why this is here, there you go.
So here we are. Everything we had written in our design doc has been brought to life. Next up, we need people to play it, so we're going to need to make sure it's in a state where we can leave it in the hands of strangers. A few little other things we didn't cover in that regard. We have a main menu screen, victory and defeat panels that let you loop through the game, and a few other little necessities like an exit button, in case someone doesn't want to play the game for the rest of their natural life. Come back next episode and see how players immediately broke the game, scored tens of thousands of points, and found that the optimal way to play was to buy the newspaper item over and over again and ignore all the cool synergies we'd made. See you there.